why inflation may be the most misunderstood tool in modern economics, and why many people experience it as a hidden tax. Hello, my name is Ralf Pirzl. I have been involved in business and politics for many years, and today I want to challenge a perception that affects everyone, but is rarely fully understood. If you find this kind of content interesting, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, because inflation is often presented as something abstract, something technical, something controlled, but in reality, it has very real consequences, and it affects your daily life more than most political decisions. Let's start with the basics. Inflation means that over time, your money loses purchasing power. The same amount of money buys less, and if your income does not increase at the same pace, you are effectively losing wealth. That is why many people experience inflation as a hidden tax, not because it is officially called a tax, but because it reduces what your money can do. Now the question is, why does inflation happen? One important factor is government spending. Especially in times of crisis, in recent years we have seen two major global events. The first was COVID-19. Governments around the world introduced massive support programs. They provided financial assistance to individuals and businesses to prevent economic collapse. These measures were necessary, but they were also expensive and they increased public debt significantly. The second major factor has been the war in Ukraine. After Russia's invasion, many countries, especially in Europe, provided financial and military support to Ukraine. At the same time, energy markets were disrupted. Europe reduced its dependence on Russian gas, and energy prices increased sharply, and energy is at the core of every economy. When energy prices rise, everything becomes more expensive. Production, transport, food, all of it. So what do these events have in common? They require money, a lot of money. And when governments spend more than they collect, debt increases. Now here is where things become more complex. There are generally two ways for governments to deal with rising debt. The first is direct taxation, raising taxes to increase revenue. The second is inflation, allowing the value of money to decrease over time, because when inflation rises, the real value of existing debt falls. In simple terms, debt becomes easier to repay. But inflation has another effect. As prices rise, tax revenues increase in nominal terms. For example, value-added tax generates more income, even if consumption does not change significantly. At the same time, savings lose purchasing power, which means that people holding cash are effectively losing value. And this creates a silent transfer from savers to borrowers, and often to governments. This is why inflation is sometimes described as a hidden mechanism, not because it is secret, but because its effects are not always immediately visible. However, that it is important to be balanced. Inflation is not always negative. Moderate inflation can support economic growth. It can encourage investment, and it can prevent deflation, which can be even more damaging. The real problem arises when inflation is too high or poorly controlled, because in those situations, the confidence in the currency begins to erode, and once trust is lost, the consequences can be severe. People start to avoid holding money. Prices rise faster, and the system becomes unstable. Countries like Argentina provide a clear example of what can happen when inflation becomes persistent and uncontrolled. So what does this mean for individuals? It means awareness is critical. Understanding how inflation works is essential to protecting your financial future, because relying only on cash savings can be risky over time. Diversification becomes important. Assets like real estate, equities, or other investments can help preserve value, although they also come with risks. So what are we really looking at? Is inflation just an economic side effect? Or is it a powerful tool that shapes wealth, policy, and society? Because in the end, inflation is not just about prices. It is about value. It is about trust. And it is about how economic systems operate beneath the surface. If you want to understand global economics and politics without noise, subscribe to Nexopol and tell me in the comments, do you see inflation as a necessary tool or as a hidden cost you cannot avoid?